From the Gray Man Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more. Now, the latest from GraymanBriefing.com. Here's this week's Sword, read out by Super Essie.
This week, the U.S. economy experienced extreme volatility as new tariffs with China led to a market crash followed by record-breaking gains after a temporary pause. Nationwide, protests erupted over pro-Palestinian activism, deportation cases, and Trump administration policies, with over 1,200 coordinated events and several incidences of violence and disruption. China indirectly acknowledged cyberattacks targeting U.S. infrastructure during a closed-door meeting, signaling a strategic warning over Taiwan. Meanwhile, the DOJ launched a new Second Amendment task force to support gun rights and roll back firearm regulations. Also, the FBI is under investigation for its involvement in January 6. Let's begin with cybersecurity and national security briefings. In Switzerland, a confidential meeting took place back in December of 2024 between the U.S. and Chinese officials to address cyberattacks on American critical infrastructure. The U.S. delegation, led by the Ambassador at Large for Cyberspace, included representatives from the State Department, Pentagon, National Security Council, and other intelligence agencies. They confronted officials from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding attacks attributed to the hacker group Volt Typhoon. These cyber intrusions reportedly targeted U.S. ports, water systems, airports, and other civilian infrastructure. On April 10th, reporting revealed that during that meeting, Chinese officials indirectly tied these cyber activities to U.S. support for Taiwan. U.S. representatives interpreted this as both a threat and a partial admission that China was behind the intrusions. This marks a shift from prior outright denials of involvement. Now moving into national security with that assassination attempt from 2024, or at least one of them. A Department of Justice filing on April 7th revealed that Ryan Routh, who is charged with attempting to assassinate Trump in 2024, tried to acquire anti-aircraft weapons from someone he believed to be a Ukrainian contact. In messages, Ryan asked for an RPG or Stinger missile, writing that, quote, Trump is not good for Ukraine. In August 2024, he sent a photo of Trump's personal plane and said, quote, he gets on and off daily, while expressing a need for equipment to prevent Trump's re-election. Ryan, who had traveled to Ukraine to support their war against Russia, was discovered by Secret Service near Trump's golf club in West Palm Beach, Florida. While hiding with a rifle, he fled and was later arrested on September 24, 2024. He was formally charged with attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate, illegal weapons possession, and assault on a federal officer, and his trial will be September of this year, 2025. Now moving into government oversight, U.S. intelligence officials are currently investigating potential involvement of the FBI in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. On April 9th, the Chief of Staff to Director of National Intelligence confirmed the ongoing inquiry during the Senate confirmation hearing for the role of Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. This investigation follows a December 2024 DOJ report that found 26 informants with the FBI took part in the protest that day. The DNI Chief of Staff alleges that the informants were active participants and accused law enforcement of suppressing this information, attributing the involvement probably, this is his quote, to the FBI's Washington field office. Moving on to the Second Amendment briefing. On April 9th, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the creation of a DOJ Second Amendment task force supporting President Trump's broader pro-gun initiative. The task force is designed to marshal DOJ policy and litigation resources toward defending lawful gun ownership and rolling back regulations viewed as federal overreach. Bondi criticized the prior administration for imposing restrictions that allegedly targeted law-abiding gun owners. The task force will also review the ATF's final rules, that's 2021 R-08F and 2022 R-17F, which involve stabilizing braces, of course, and the definition of firearms dealing, and it may repeal the enhanced regulatory enforcement policy. Now let's move into the supply chain and economy. On April 9th, U.S. stock futures tumbled after both the U.S. and China implemented new tariffs. The U.S. placed 104% tariffs on Chinese imports, and China retaliated with 84% tariffs on the U.S. This led to a fifth consecutive daily drop for the S&P 500, as well as all other major indexes. But later the same day, President Trump announced a 90-day pause on most reciprocal tariffs, excluding those targeting China, and a standard 10% global tariff. This sparked the largest single-day points gain in history for both the Dow and NASDAQ. The Dow rose by almost 3,000 points, or about 8%. NASDAQ climbed almost 2,000 points, and the S&P 500 jumped 9.5%. Hospitals, however, according to some new warnings from healthcare administrators, hospitals and healthcare leaders are warning of rising costs and possible delays in medical supply chains due to the new tariffs. Administrators say that tariffs could drive up prices for drugs, delay equipment upgrades, and impact patient care. Many hospitals already face financial strain and rely on imports, especially from China, for critical equipment and medications. Some economists say that the disruptions could be temporary, but industry experts argue the risk of prolonged supply disruptions and rising costs is real. There's uncertainty over how long retaliation measures might last. Now let's look at the civil unrest, societal collapse, and extremism briefing. Mass protests have erupted across the U.S. in response to the court-ordered deportation of a Columbian University graduate, Mahmoud Khalil, and recent Trump administration policies. Khalil, a Jordanian national of Palestinian descent, was detained after it was determined he violated his student visa by participating in anti-Israel political activities. He had served as a spokesperson for the Columbia University Apartheid Divest Coalition and helped lead illegal encampments on campus. The federal government invoked the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 to justify his removal on national security grounds. While a federal court in New Jersey temporarily blocked his deportation, Khalil's case became a rallying point for nationwide protest. Critics argue that the move threatens free speech for visa holders and sets a precedent for politically motivated immigration enforcement. Demonstrations under the banners of Free Khalil and Hands Off have surged in over 1,200 locations. Events were led by groups including Antifa, Indivisible, and the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or the PSL. Protesters oppose a range of Trump policies, including federal worker firings, Social Security office closures, allegedly, deportations, reductions in transgender special privileges, and cuts to alternative health care programs. At UC Davis in California, Antifa disrupted a Turning Point USA event hosted by former police officer black male named Brandon Tatum, destroying property and forcing organizers to leave. In Norfolk, Virginia, and in New Jersey, activists protested against Maersk, their shipping activity, accusing the company of aiding Israel airstrike operations through deliveries of F-35 fighter jet parts. In Washington, D.C., a pro-Palestinian rally drew over 6,000 participants. Other major cities also saw turnouts in the tens of thousands, with support from LGBT groups, socialist, and anti-ICE coalitions. In Philadelphia, protesters attended a budget hearing to demand defunding police and reallocating funds to schools, libraries, and parks. They rallied under the banner of Fund the People, Not Police and Prisons. In Harrisburg, PA, a man identified as Cody Balmer was arrested and charged with terrorism, attempted murder, and arson after setting fire to the governor's mansion, who is a Democrat, Josh Shapiro, and while his family was also inside asleep. The suspect appeared to be motivated by really just... they're still looking at this. So there's some saying that he's upset over having property seized or taken back by the government. It seems like he's very directly upset at Shapiro rather than any other sort of policies going on. So we'll follow this one, or at least the briefing will, and we'll report as we see it. But yeah, that's a pretty new development. So anyway, since late March, anti-Trump and pro-Palestinian protests have increased, as we said before. It's likely protests are at their peaks compared to any time we've seen between Trump's 2015 political entry and the Hamas attacks on Israel in 2023, respectively. So we're seeing the most protests right now than we've seen in like the last 5 years, obviously with the exception of the BLM riots. The anti-Trump movement has coordinated their protest themes and dates, but fail to have a coherent message about what they counter or are protesting. They garner support from LGBT, socialist, Antifa, civil rights, and democratic-centric organizations. Pro-Palestinians have a central message and are highly organized while gathering support from young adults, like college, Hamas sympathizers, the Arab diaspora, and of course LGBT communities, oddly enough. We are unable to cover all the actions and events regarding these two movements, but they are now rivaling the engagement seen during the George Floyd BLM riots, albeit without the accompanying violence. Both movements have participated in violent actions, though isolated. Vandalism and trespassing is common, particularly among the pro-Palestinian groups. The hands-off protests were coordinated by activist group Indivisible, which receives funding from left-wing billionaire George Soros as part of a top-down effort connected to the Democratic Party and progressive dark money networks. Monitor local news and remain cognizant of potential protests. Avoid these locations. Prior protest areas are likely hotspots for future unrest, as are government buildings. Also, major cities are also seeing an influx of caravan and vehicle-based rallies that take place on the roadways. These are primarily in support of Palestine, and many are based near the HQs or offices related to the defense sector and those perceived as supporting Israel, such as Google and, as we said earlier, Maersk. Plan alternative routes around impacted areas and expect traffic disruptions. That is all for this week. Thanks for listening, and as always, remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.
Get unredacted, real-time briefings sent via email and through the Telegram and Signal apps by joining the Gray Man Briefing.